Hello, Kate. Good to see you.
Hello.
Oh, that looks like a pretty full board. Shall we
Let's do it.
let's get into it? Well, good afternoon, everyone. Great to have you all with us here for another ACDC coaching calibration webinar. I'm David McQueen, one of the directors at Grist, and as usual, I have the enormous pleasure of introducing you to Kate Golby, one of our amazing senior behavioural analysts. Kate, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks, Dave. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well. Well, thank you. Hey, interesting fact. Today we've had 2,000 leaders actually complete like an ACDC or a tactical behavioural coaching program with Grist. So that's a bit of a milestone.
That's good. Very nice.
Yeah. So we're all excited about that. So thank you for coming and jumping onto this ACDC webinar. Righto. So as most of you already know, today's webinar is the second in a series of webinars aimed at the process of calibration. And so that is, when we align the way that we self-assess the quality of our coaching sessions using Grist ACDC coaching methodology. So to start with today, I'm going to give you a little bit of context about what we're going to look at today. And then Kate is going to take us through some of the examples of good and not so good coaching behaviours before we finish, as usual, with setting a behavioural-based coaching goal for your conversations. So it's important to note that today we've got both coaches and observers. And just like last time, primarily this webinar is for all of you leaders who are actually doing the ACDC coaching methodology on the GIST by Grist or as part of a program and with one of our consultants to drive better outcomes in your businesses. If you're attending as an observer, you've joined us because you want to get a bit of a sneak peek into how we use the process of calibration and self-assessment to help coaches unlock the potential of their people. So for coaches, we aim to be finished around 10 to 4 or 5 to 4. And for the observers, we ask that you stick around just for the last 5 minutes or so so that we can discuss some of the options available to you should you want to know more about ACDC. As much as we can, we'd love to hear your thoughts along the way. So, it can be really hard for us to be able to answer all your questions along the way if everyone asks them at once. So please drop your questions into the chat field and we'll do our best to answer them. And if we do miss answering any of your questions, we will come back to you after the webinar. You also have the chance to use your annotation tool again today. So if you can find it, you move up the mouse up to the top of the screen until you see this navigation bar appear. You click annotate and choose a symbol and you'll be able to make your mark on the screen as we go along. Okay. So today what we're going to do is we're going to focus in on the current state. So that's the first C in the ACDC methodology. Now, if you remember, ACDC is an intent-based leadership conversation framework. And so what that means is that it's more important for you to achieve the intent of each step or each phase in the conversation than it is to have to tick all the boxes on each and every ACDC coaching behaviour. Now, if we have a look at the intent statement of the current state, what it says is that we have to create awareness and ownership of the current results, the current behaviours that produce those results, and then the link between the two. So Kate and I are actually really interested in your thoughts here. So either in the chat field or using the annotation tool, which word do you think is the most important word in this intent statement? Just let us know what words do you think are the most important in that intent statement to get right in your coaching sessions? Ownership. Yeah. Right. And we couldn't agree more. The ultimate aim here is to help your coachee take ownership of their current state. Now, to do that, there's got to be a degree of awareness about how their current actions or behaviours are producing their current results. It's a critical part of the coaching process. So let me ask you another question here. If your coachee doesn't see the connection between how their current behaviour is producing their current results, how does that actually impact the rest of your coaching conversation? As you all know, all the people that we coach have different personalities. Now, some of them actually accept that their current results are an outcome of their current behaviours, and they do it really quickly. They take ownership straight away. Now, I wish all of my coachees were like that, but they're just not. Many of us experience some of our team members pushing back a little bit and coming up with, I don't know, reasons or even excuses about why they didn't achieve a great outcome. Maybe you've actually felt that your team member is just giving your coaching session a little bit of lip service. So sometimes as coaches, we have to do more work here at the current state of the conversation to help our people to see the connection between their behaviour and the outcomes that they're achieving. Because if they don't take ownership here, they don't really open up to new ideas or new ways of behaving later on in the coaching conversation, and you're much less likely to get that behavioural change that you're after. And when you get this right, what you're going to hear is you typically hear a shift in language. And language will move from things like, oh, if they just got back to me earlier, it would have been different, to words like, oh, if I had used a different approach there, then I would have got a different outcome. Or something like, you're right, I reckon if I did that differently, that would have changed things. And you can actually hear the acceptance or the awareness and ownership of the behaviour and its impact in the language that they use. That becomes really important before moving to the desired state. So let's take a look at some of the small coaching behaviours that can actually help get the current state phase right. Just like the agenda phase that we did last month, the current phase consists of 5 small but very important behaviours. As you know, Grist, we've been listening and assessing to coaching conversations for a long time now. And out of all the coaching behaviours that we hear coaches do, these are the top 5, the most critical moments that create awareness and ownership required to drive real behavioural change quickly. It starts by discussing the current outcomes and behaviours. And if your team member isn't actually owning their performance yet, you can add your observations as a little bit more evidence to your conversation. Next, discussing the link. That's probably my all-time favourite coaching behaviour ever, but because it cements the learning and adds enormous value before you actually then finish up with gaining a bit of buy-in. So, coaches that don't do this current state of the coaching conversation well, they really struggle to find the storyline in their conversations. And what I mean by this is that they struggle to help their team member really identify the coachable behaviours that will improve their performance. And as a result, team members see their coaching sessions as laborious or a low value type of activity. So, Kate, you're here today going to help us take a deeper look into these 5 current state coaching behaviours, have a look at what's working, have a look at what's not so good. Take us through the 5 behaviours, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thanks, Dave. So as you just kind of touched on there, in order to get that team member to improve their performance, we first really need to get a clear idea of their baseline, where the team member is currently at. And from there, we can work as coaches to begin to, write the rest of their story, to get that improvement going, get their journey moving and their trajectory going upwards. So the 5 ACDC current state behaviours that Jay just showed us there, they'll help guide a coach and a team member through the process. So throughout the session, for many of you joined us last time with the agenda session, it's going to run pretty similar. We're going to deep dive into the 5 behaviours, and I'm going to detail, why they contribute to an effective coaching session, their impact on both a team member and on the coach, and also the impact of not doing them. And then we're going to listen to some audio examples, give you an idea of maybe where your coaching session is at the moment and how it could sound with just a few tweaks to the process. All right, well, let's get started. Okay, so discussing team members' current outcomes, and this really sets the scene for the whole phase. So through encouraging a team member to reflect on their performance, a coach can establish a team member's in their mind a picture of where they are and potentially, engender a sense of ownership and begin to create a want to improve. So often the first step of change is acknowledging what currently isn't working, or maybe what is working but needs a slight tweak. It's The impact of not knowing where the team member currently sits and their results is an inability to quantify any future improvement, whether their future results are better or worse. So in the current outcomes, we're looking for something that's measurable, a measurable outcome that the team members' behaviours have led to. I'll give you a few examples to get your mind thinking on the right track. So we're looking for something like perhaps a metric, which could sound like your sales conversion is at 60%. Something like that would be a metric outcome. An end result could also be an outcome, something that would sound like the customer agreed to sign up. There's an end result. And another option could be customer reactions. So maybe you could hear in their tones that they just weren't happy with the solution. So all of these are examples of current outcomes. So let's have a listen to how a coach and you as a coach could try and elicit that outcome from your team members.
How do you think that interaction went? How do you think the customer felt after?
Yeah, I think a lot. Well, look, he might have felt a little bit pushed away and a little bit neglected at the end there. And honestly, maybe that wasn't the best customer experience.
Yeah, Kate, you could hear the coach asking the question there to elicit that response. So what are your thoughts about or if a coach is actually telling the team member what the outcome is instead of doing it by a question?
Yeah. So we do hear that quite often, and if you think about it through the intent of the behaviour, is telling a team member what their results are isn't helpful on its own. So what we want to do is get that team member to really own that outcome. And so what they need to do, if the coach was to tell the outcome, they then need to discuss it a bit further. So, maybe instead of advising all of the KPIs, the coach could begin with a question or a statement like, I can see that you've had a dip in your AHT. Can you tell me, where you finished in your results for September? And that brings that team member into the discussion and gets them on the path to that self-realization and ownership of that outcome.
Okay. So it doesn't matter whether you ask the question or tell. What's important here is the discussion that occurs as a result of it. That's what you're looking for.
Absolutely, yeah. So some team members do just need a little bit of a kickstart, and that they might not really respond to just an open question from the beginning. So just guiding them to get that conversation started can be really helpful.
Great.
Yeah. All right. And next we have the current behaviours. So I want you to indulge me here. I'm going to take you on a wild analogy. So if you can imagine an iceberg floating out in the ocean, the exposed peaks above the water, sun shining off the white surfaces, that's our current outcomes. Okay, they're pretty easy to see. Outcomes are pretty easy to see. They're pretty obvious. Then we go down in our submarine. So we've got James Cameron on an auto dial. He's let us borrow the Deep Sea Challenger and we're going to take it for a spin. So now we're getting down underneath the water. And what we can actually see, that iceberg is 90% underneath the water's surface. And that's our behaviours, or as we call them at Grist, our micro behaviours. So we can still observe them. We just need to, look a little bit closer and maybe have a really rich friend. Micro behaviours are small actions, but if you're looking, you can see someone do them. They're definable, observable, accessible, and most importantly, they're 100% within the control of the team member. So most of us work on autopilot for the most part with not a heap of awareness of what we're currently doing at any moment. By asking a team member questions, a coach can bring that awareness to the front of mind. And this can build confidence when a behaviour is done well, and also give an opportunity to identify what needs work, which helps a team member to see which behaviours are contributing to the current outcomes. Without knowing current behaviours, team members may, tend to avoid responsibility for their outcomes and not really understand the importance of their role. So what I want to do is have a listen to how a coach may get a team member to examine their current behaviours.
So what do you think that you did that might have contributed to that kind of disgruntled feeling?
I actually think that because I was in such a rush, like honestly, I was just desperate for my lunch break. And that day I had leftover Korean burrito.
Oh, the Korean burrito. That felt so delicious. I was so jealous.
Oh, it was so yum. Anyway, I was in a rush and I didn't offer further assistance. I just said thank you and goodbye straight away, which came off as rude.
So I think I am going to have to come up with a better analogy than that iceberg, Dave. What with global warming headed the way it is, despite our net 50 target and net zero target, maybe I'll just have to take a leaf out of this coach's book and use some culinary metaphors. But alas, did that help out?
Look, yes, it did. I think what you're talking about there is really the fact that if you want to find out what's behind the outcomes, we need to take a deep dive and look at the team members' behaviours that produce them. So they kind of go together. Behaviours produce outcomes, and outcomes are produced by behaviours.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, and again, like we discussed with the current outcomes, it's really important to get that the coach gets that team member involved in that discussion. They need to be thinking and analysing their own behaviours. So, asking questions that gets them on that path to their own realizations is really important here as well. Yeah. Okay, I want to have a listen to this one, Dave, and tell me what you think about it.
Okay.
So yeah, the focus is really this strong statement of assistance. Do you know what I mean by that?
Oh yeah, it's like saying, I can definitely help with that to the customer.
Yeah, that's a great example. So how do you think that makes the customer feel?
Well...
What do you think?
Okay, so that sounded like the coach was just telling the team member what behaviour that they wanted to focus on, rather than asking the question, trying to do any discussion. They just said, hey, this is what I think you should work on.
Yeah, it felt like quite directive and like the coach already had in their mind what they wanted to focus on, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just so I'm clear here, how would you assess that? Would you assess that as he's got not quite there? So does that, is that a no or is it a yes? Like, how would you record that?
Yeah, so on a black and white yes no scale, that would be a no. And what we'd want to shift it from a almost there or a not quite would be then afterwards to maybe ask an open question about some other behaviours that are contributing to their outcomes, so that the team member can reflect on their own performance and they are a little bit more invested in changing them. Why would a team member change a behaviour that they don't really see any issues with? So we want them to start thinking, going, oh, okay, yeah, that could do with some work. And that really comes most strongly from that self-realisation.
It's that reflection piece, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
Okay, so our next behaviour is the observations. And this provides an opportunity for a coach to demonstrate that they're actually listening and paying attention to their team members on the floor. Insightful observations make team members feel acknowledged, validated and seen in their work environment. And it can also help reinforce previous discussion points around current behaviours or even current outcomes and shine a light on them from a different angle. What is key here is that those observations need to be concrete and specific and directly from that coach. So this encourages a discussion about what was observed rather than a debate about the validity of the observation itself. A great way to make an observation more concrete is to notice both the behaviour, so the cause, and the effect, the outcome. And this makes it really objective. Positive coach observations are also a really easy way to empathise and enthuse with a team member. So an opportunity to praise and develop rapport, helping a coach coaching session feel much more of a positive experience rather than a negative one. But they're actually also really vital if you're struggling to raise a team member's awareness of opportunities to improve during the current outcomes and the current behaviour stages. Let's have a listen to an example of a coach observation. Now, I know I'm making you work very hard today, Dave, but I want you to let me know what you think again.
Okay.
Having listened to a few calls now, I think you're just really nice to customers, and I love that from you.
Oh, well, I definitely try.
Okay, so for that one, for me, it's just a bit vague, isn't it? Like being nice, like it's too general. They haven't really defined any specific example of a behaviour or even an outcome, really. Like nice is just, it's a bit very general.
Yeah, it sounds positive, but there's not really, anything substantial that the team member can use to improve their session in the future. It's just a bit vapid, I suppose.
I think you hear this stuff a lot where people go, that it sounds like a coaching session, but because there's no storyline, there's no behaviour. I have no clarity as the coachee about what I'm doing well or what I can do differently. So, it still might have the feeling of a coaching session, but I don't walk away with any clarity about what needs to be improved, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. All right, let's have a listen to this one, see how it sounds different.
Look, I'll be honest, I have been a bit of a spy this week, trying to listen to everyone on the floor.
Yeah, I've seen you rolling around on the floor. Look at you, all 007.
Yeah, doing my best to be incognito. But what I wanted to say was that out of everyone, you do such a good job of keeping the customer informed. You're really clear with your language about what you're doing on your end, and I think that just gives them such comfort. So really well done.
Oh, thank you. That's really good to know.
So see how the coach there used much more specific examples. He mentioned keeping the customer informed, and he also mentioned how that affected the customer. So it's just making it much more concrete, much more useful to the team member.
Yeah, much more useful. Yeah.
I've got one more, and this one's actually an example of where that observation isn't just positive feedback.
I'm really glad we listened to that call.
Well, that makes one of us.
No, seriously, because it really gave me a good chance to listen to your approach again. I really like how you use their names throughout the call. I think that is a really natural personal touch from you. But do you remember when the customer spoke about their upcoming surgery? How did you respond?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I kind of brushed past that, didn't I?
Yeah, I think so too. To me, you missed the opportunity to empathise.
So see how you can still use that to even provoke the team member into thinking a little bit more about their behaviours through a coach observations.
It's a great question. Here's what happened. How did you respond? Remember back to how you did it. How did you respond? What'd you say? What'd you do? That's a good question.
Yeah, exactly. Right, so the next behaviour we've got is the discuss link. And for me, this is really the crux of the whole current state phase. And Dave, I know you mentioned earlier that this is your favourite as well. I feel like it's a real linchpin there.
Yep.
So this one brings everything that the coach and the team member have discussed in the coaching session previously and really connects them, helping the team member to not only understand the cause and the effect, but crucially gain that acceptance of where they're at and their current baseline. So it's about a team member acknowledging that they play an active role in the conversations and what they do actually impacts their outcomes. This behaviour is also important to begin the process of looking forward, incentivizing behavioural change through having a team member understand the consequences of their actions. The link is that, primary motivator for the change in behaviour. After that acceptance is gained, a coach can highlight the benefit of improving behaviours by helping the team member to see how their current behaviours are influencing those current outcomes and, engendering that, real commitment to change by the team member. In the case of positive current outcomes, it will, tend to encourage the behaviours to continue and do more of them. But in the case of unsatisfactory outcomes, it really drives that desire to find a new and better way of doing things. And we'll find that without this link, team members don't really have the basis for understanding why changing their behaviour changes the outcome. So coaching tends to become just a bit redundant in their minds. If they see that the customer is having the only role of power, they tend not to see the need to change their own behaviours in the
It's really the aha moment in the current phase part of the conversation, isn't it? It's like, I get it. So when I do that, this happens. Yep, it's that cause and effect relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for me, this is where I find that, like you said, that when you start to talk about the behaviour and the outcome, the coachee realises that you're not talking about them personally or you're attacking them personally. It's about the technique. It's about the behaviour. And that's where you often hear and feel a lot of resistance sort of coachees or team members sort of go, oh, okay. So, and they relax a little into it and they go, oh, okay. So I can do that differently. So it's not about me. I can do that behaviour differently. And it just changes the energy in a coaching conversation, getting this behaviour right often.
Yeah, absolutely. And it helps them work as a team. It's up to the coach to guide the team member through that process and teach them those techniques.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's listen to an example of that, how that discussed link sounds.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. How do you think that introduced process impacts your overall call times?
Well, it only takes a few seconds to do, so that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't take up much time. And how do you think that will impact the customer?
I guess they'd be less confused. And, like if you don't tell your sous chef or whatever they're called, if you don't tell them what they're doing, the recipe's going to take so much longer to do.
It's nearly the double discuss link there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
But as the coach, typically you're the more senior person in the relationship, and you kind of know what the right answer is. But you ask this question to test the knowledge of your team member to go, hey, do you know why this is important? Do you know how this has come about? And that's when it instills you with confidence in your team member that they really know what they're doing here, or I've got a bit of work to do. That's why it becomes so important, because you're talking about the understanding of the whole technique and the impact on outcome. So, Kate, in this example, the coach asks a question to how do you think introducing that process impacts overall call? What would happen if the coach just simply pointed out the link, actually said the link rather than actually asked it as a question?
Yeah. I mean, if we sort of think about the intent of this, it's about, the team member understanding the link. And so if we want that to happen, we need the coach to, again, involve that team member. So it's hard to have a team member come to that realization if the coach is the only one connecting the dots. So by asking an open question afterwards, like, I guess, can you explain why that might be the case after they've drawn the link themselves? Asking that open question, you could get some insight into how the team member actually understands that link. But saying something like, so you can see how those behaviours cause those outcomes wouldn't be enough. The team member's not really doing any work, or there's no insight into how well they understand that connection.
Oh, look, I would often just ask straight up the question going, so, tell what's the link between the behaviour and the outcome there, and just ask it straight up. It can be that simple. Right?
Absolutely, it can be that simple. Exactly.
Cool.
All right. Now, for those of you who attended our first session in the agenda, this behaviour will be familiar to you, the buy-in. So now we're looking for a buy-in to the current state phase, as opposed to the buy-in to the agenda. And here we're asking for a commitment to work on changing the team members' current behaviours. So gauging how incentivised a team member is before proceeding gives an opportunity to amplify this and clarify anything that might have been missed. By not checking in, a coach doesn't actually know whether a team member has, bought into the whole spiel. And this could really result in a lackluster participation, and workshopping how to improve as we move on into the desired state. So first up, let's listen to how a lot of the coaches are currently attempting this behaviour. Sorry.
It sounds like something that we can really improve on for you, so let's keep discussing that for today.
So do you think the team member sounded on board with the focus, Dave?
I think the reaction was, No, not really. I think that it sounds like the coach jumped on it and the coach made up their mind going, yeah, that's what we should work on.
Yeah. And so, I mean, as you can imagine, the flow-on effects from that will likely be that the coach is doing the rest of the work. So they're driving the remainder of that session with a team member just sitting by and not really participating or, taking control of their own improvement. By asking a question, the coach could have really got a better understanding of whether the team member was committed to working on that behaviour or not.
Yeah, we hear a lot. Maybe if the coach is under a bit of time pressure or something like that, and they hear their coachee actually say the right behaviour or what to work on or whatever, they go, yeah, great, let's do that. And they're just trying to expedite the process, make it go faster. But it's a critical time to really make sure that you get that buy-in from the individual to go, yeah, I want to work on that.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, amplify that, amp them up, get them ready to work on it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Right, well, let's have a listen to how a better example might sound.
Great. Well, this behaviour around seeking permission to proceed, do we want to try and improve that in this session?
Yeah, I'd really appreciate that. Did you just seek permission to proceed, Ben?
I guess I did. See, it can be that natural.
What if a team member volunteered by stating something like, okay, I'm definitely going to work on that. Would that be okay? Because in this example, the question was asked, but if the team member stated it, are you happy with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so in that example that you just gave, the intent has still been satisfied. The team member agrees and is buying in on their own accord into that belief that they should improve the behaviour. And you'll often find that with really experienced coaches and team members who have been doing this for a while, they're into a rhythm. The team member actually kind of knows the process of the coaching. And so they will tend to go, oh, I've found a behaviour that I do need to work on, and they'll initiate that buy-in to want to move and get into that meaty practice session.
Yeah, we hear much more in like our round 2 or round 3 sort of assessments when they've been doing ACDC coaching for a little while. You really hear the difference. You really hear the team members start to go, oh, I can do that, and they generate their own buy-in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's doing all the hard work for the coach, so it's nice.
Really nice.
Okay, so we're going to do something a little bit different in this session. We're going to play a game. So this game is called Outcome, Observation, or Behaviour. And this activity is actually one of quite a few that are available on the GIST by GRIST platform. So let's go in there and do it, and you can have a look while we're at it. So I'll jump over there now. And what I want to know from you is, of these 3 quotes, which of these is an outcome, which is an observation, and which is a behaviour? So we'll use our annotations tools for this, and you'll just need to put, a thumbs up or a heart or whatever next to one of these behaviour, outcome, or observations, and then we'll pop them in and see how we go. So let's start with our first quote. I felt like that was a really positive conversation, and the customer was happy with the result. So do we think that's a behaviour, an outcome, or an observation? And we've got 1 for observation, but we've got a lot for outcomes. So I'm going to go with the majority here and pick up outcome and pop it in. Okay, next one. I outlined key next steps, including responsibilities and timeframes. Do we think that's a behaviour or an observation? Okay, behaviour seems to be the hands down winner, so let's pop that in. And our final quote, I noticed when you asked the customer what actions they'd taken to date, you cut them off and they weren't able to answer properly. What do we think?
There's only one left, isn't there?
I'm guessing it's an observation. Although we might, I don't know, maybe some people aren't really happy with the responses so far. So are we happy with what we've got? If not, speak up now in the chat. Anyone want to make any changes? 3, 2, 1. No. All right. Let's submit those. So it's going to want me to type something in there, which I'll just put. There we go.
Hey,
100%. Well done. Looks like we're, pretty on track with trying to, getting to understand our current state phase. And, maybe that activity has helped you identify maybe your current state, where you're at with your understanding of each of those behaviours.
It's an important activity because when you're listening to your own recording, you really need to be able to listen to your language and go, that's an outcome, that's a behaviour, that's an observation, so that you can do a more accurate self-assessment.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, what we're going to do now is have a listen to a little snippet of the current state phase. Dave, you ready to do a little bit of a calibration? I want to test your skills and your knowledge of the behaviours that we've gone into.
Let's do it, Kate.
All right. So let me, sorry guys, you're hiding the play button. There we go.
So thanks for listening to that call, Stuart. We got through it.
Yes, we did, thankfully.
So how do you think the customer, and it was Linda in this case, felt after the call?
Well, honestly, I think you could kind of hear in her voice that she was a little bit frustrated.
Yeah, I got that little bit too. Do you think there was something specific that she was frustrated about?
Well, the call definitely took longer, which was, I guess was completely my fault. I think by the end of the call, you could just hear in her own mind, she thought that she had a pretty poor experience, I guess.
You mentioned taking longer being your fault. Was there something specifically that you think you did?
Well, I think at the time, I thought that I restarted her inquiry, but now that we listened back, I didn't hear it. I didn't say it. So I think that really led me down the wrong track.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I was going to say the same thing. So can you see how, the impact that a restate can have for a customer?
Totally. I guess without that restate, it really leaves you open to interpreting their inquiry wrong, which is obviously what happened in that case. And again, it leads to that more time on the phone and then a dissatisfied customer.
Yeah, absolutely. So are you happy to work on that restate today to improve it?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I want you to grab that annotation tool again and just click around which behaviours you think you heard in that little snippet. Just on the right there or somewhere around it so we can get an idea of, did we hear all of them? Did we only hear a few?
I thought I definitely heard outcomes and behaviours.
Oh, that's looking very pretty. Lit up like a Christmas tree. Okay, we've got a good spread there. Wonderful. Okay, so from what I can tell from that, the majority feel like they heard most of the behaviours. So let's jump in, play the recording again, and we'll see how we went.
So thanks for listening to that call, Stuart. We got through it.
Yes, we did, thankfully.
So how do you think the customer, Linda in this case, felt after the call?
Well, honestly, I think you could hear in her voice that she was a little bit frustrated.
Yeah, I got that a little bit too. Do you think there was something specific that she was frustrated about?
Well, the call definitely took longer, which was completely my fault, actually. I think by the end of the call, you could just hear that she thought that she'd had a pretty poor experience.
You mentioned taking longer being your fault. Was there something specifically that you think that you did?
I think at the time, I thought that I'd restarted her inquiry, but listening back, I didn't say it. And I think that really led me down the wrong track.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think maybe you got sidetracked engaging about the dog barking, and instead of restating her inquiry, you went straight into asking authentication questions. So what impact do you think not restating had on this conversation?
Yeah, totally. I guess without that restate, it kind of leaves you really open to interpreting their inquiry wrong, which is obviously what happened here. And again, that just leads to more time on the phone and, yeah, dissatisfied customer.
Yeah, absolutely. So are you happy to work on that restate today to improve it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so it sounds like we're on the same page. You know, we're all hearing those behaviors pretty well as they come up in our coaching session. So let's try it again with a new little snippet, see how we go.
So what's going on when you're on the phone so late?
I think that recently I've had some tricky calls, which, happens, and I get that. And so I've been putting them on hold whilst I figure out the task.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just, when I get back to them.
It, feels a little bit different, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it's their tone, I don't know. And it's like, I haven't even done anything wrong. Just hard not to take it personally sometimes.
I completely understand what you mean. I had a really hard time working out what was about me generally and what was about my performance on the phone too. But I think it's important to remember that you do so many things so well.
No, thank you.
It's true. I really notice you picking up on any detail I drop about their personal life. And that gives you such an opportunity to be personal and to engage them really well. You do that terrifically, so keep that up. And the one this morning, I loved your lively conversation about magpies.
Oh, I'm really glad that that's noticed. Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome. But yeah, so this potential issue with hold, let's try and work out how we can change that behaviour in the future. And so let's work on improving that today. All right?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, I hope you're enjoying our very professional voice actors. Let's do the same thing. I want you to give me a bit of an idea of what you heard in that little snippet.
I didn't think that the coach was going to get to buy-in right at the end, and maybe just got there.
I reckon he might have maybe snuck it in there. Okay, all right. So it looks like Discuss Link might be sitting there by himself. With only one friend. Oh, someone else is giving him some love now. Okay. All right. Well, let's jump in and see how we went.
So what's going on when you're on the phone so late?
I think that recently I've had some tricky calls, which, happens, and I get that. And so I've been putting them on hold whilst I figure out the task.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just, when I get back to them.
It feels a little bit different, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it's their tone, I don't know. And it's like, I haven't even done anything wrong. Just hard not to take it personally sometimes.
I completely understand what you mean. I had a really hard time working out what was about me generally and what was about my performance on the phone too. But I think it's important to remember that you do so many things so well.
No, thank you.
It's true. I really notice you picking up on any detail I drop about their personal life. And that gives you such an opportunity to be personal and to engage them really well. You do that terrifically, so keep that up. And the one this morning, I loved your lively conversation about magpies.
Oh, I'm really glad that that's noticed. Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome. But yeah, so this potential issue with hold, let's try and work out how we can change that behaviour in the future. And so let's work on improving that today. All right?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Right. So it looks like most of us, we sort of really detected there that it wasn't a strong link. But, even with the outcome there, it just wasn't concrete enough as an outcome. Something about their tone we need that maybe the coach needs to delve into that a little bit more with their team member to find out exactly what that customer outcome was.
Yeah, and you often see that, Kate, don't you, when a coach goes into behaviour, sometimes they go straight into observation without actually circling back and actually going, so what was the outcome of that? The outcome of doing that was, and facilitating that part of the conversation. And they just kind of, it doesn't really matter whether you do behaviours first or outcomes first, but you've got to really tick off both behaviours to really help set up that cause and effect buy-in.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great point, that the order of those two isn't important, and it often happens they go back and forth a few times between them, that really helps to create that cement, that connecting the dots, those links between the two.
Yeah.
Okay, so from your answers, that really gives me an indication that you think that these behaviours are fairly straightforward, fairly easy to understand, and it's pretty clear from those examples that we just heard that adding them into the session can be quite simple, but also can really help to establish the baseline of the team member on which to write the next chapter of their story. So let's have a look at how often those behaviours are actually happening in conversations. So here we have the performance of 500 baseline conversations, so first round coaching conversations. And what it shows is that although there are a lot of coaches who are asking team members about their current behaviours, you can see it's up there around 80%, fewer than half are actually creating awareness of the current outcomes through discussion with a team member, as we just heard in that last example. And this results in an incomplete view of that baseline. Now, if we think about that, the iceberg analogy, it looks like our coaches are spending all their time below the surface, having all the fun in their submarine, and they're forgetting to, look at the really obvious part that's sitting above the water, that outcome, and also how the two are connected, drawing those links. So the flow-on effect from that is that the team member doesn't have a clear idea of how their behaviours are resulting in the outcomes that they're getting, and also they're not seeking the team members' buy-in into working on those behaviours. So to write that that next story, that chapter about success, we need a team member who is really clear on what they did and how it resulted in the outcome that they achieved.
If you raise the outcomes, you'll see the discuss link sort of start to come up as well, because it's when you discuss both, it's easier to hit that link.
Absolutely, and it just comes so naturally. As soon as you've discussed both, it just happens as part of the conversation a lot of the time without even thinking about it. All right, so we're going to set a goal, a current state goal. Now, if you're already set up on the gist, you can enter it straight into there. Otherwise, grab a pen and paper, and I want you to commit to work on one of these behaviours. So what I want you to do is pick one of the 5 current state behaviours: current outcomes, current behaviours, observation, discuss link, or buy-in, and jot that down. Which one do you want to work on? Which one's going to, have the biggest impact on your coaching conversation? And usually we say, you can set as many goals as you like, but we do recommend working on just one small goal at a time and putting all of your focus into creating a really good habit with that behavior. Next step is I want you to estimate approximately how many times you'll do this behavior and how many times you'll put it into practice. And that can be over the next hour or day or week, however long you want to set yourself. So an example might be, are you going to discuss current behaviours with all of your team members tomorrow? And that can be your number and your time frame. Or are you going to make an observation on 50% of your coaching sessions next week? Jot down that. And now I want you to measure how you're going to keep yourself accountable and the impact that working on this behaviour and introducing it into your sessions, what's the impact that it's had? So are you going to keep a note on a little sticky note on the side of your computer and just do a little check every time you've done it? Or are you going to set a calendar reminder? Okay, and now I want you to rate your confidence. On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you can achieve this goal? Right, what numbers have we got? Put in the chat, how confident are you on achieving this goal? What have we got, Dave? Anyone committing?
It's an important question, though, isn't it? You know.
Yeah. So
8. There we go.
Yeah, we've got an 8. Excellent. I was going to say if it's below 7, I would suggest heading back to one of those earlier stages in our goal setting process and rethinking maybe the metrics or the number or the time frame that you've set yourself, because a goal confidence level of less than 7 really means that obviously there's something about it that doesn't feel right to you. So we want you to set achievable goals. Otherwise, they're just not going to get done. They're not going to get worked on, and we're not going to see that progress. So set yourself achievable goals and set them more regularly if that's the better way to get that continual improvement. Right, great. So we've set our goals. Congratulations, everybody.
Well done. Got through current state.
Yeah. So, that kind of really wraps up our current state. We've got our goal. We're ready to get cracking, get working on it. So at this point, I guess I'd really like to thank you for participating in the current state deep dive. And I hope that you're leaving with some new insights and a really clear goal for yourself to work on. We've got a few more of these sessions coming up, one more this year. We're squeezing one in December. So we'd love to have you along to that one. And that's going to delve into the desired state, the D in the ACDC model. And then we'll talk about how practicing helps to improve behaviours. So it's a really good one, this one. And then we move on to the other phases in the ACDC methodology next year, and then we'll move on to even some more specific, problem points that you might be experiencing as a coach. Everyone who attended today will automatically be sent invitations for the upcoming webinars. So, I guess I'll hand over to Dave again, and he's going to just take our observers through the GIST platform and the ACDC model coaching. So, Dave, take it away.
Thanks, Kate. Terrific insights. Really showing how effective that current state phase of our coaching conversation, needs to be, and how it really helps sort of start to provide the clarity, and then which then in turn creates the ownership and buy-in to the fact that it's actually my behaviours that produce my results. It's such an important part of the conversation. All right, so over the next few minutes, what we want to do is we want to show you ACDC on the GIST by GRIST platform. Kate and I have been referring to it over the course of the webinar. Now, we believe that ACDC on the GIST platform is the shortest and yet most effective coaching upskilling program available online. And to be true to the platform's name, I'm just going to give you the gist of what you need to know. So to become a great ACDC coach is a pretty straightforward process. First, you just got to learn the model, and then you've got to put it into practice and apply your skill. Now, of course, as you go to my dashboard, you start to get some feedback on how you're going. So this is learn, practice, feedback. This process is how the ACDC on the GIST is actually built, how the platform is built to do. So what's interesting here is when we asked leaders what they really wanted from their online learning, by far the most common response was, just tell me what I need to know. Yeah, they didn't want all the extra information. So what we did is we created 32 2-minute videos that gave leaders just the gist of what they needed to know about their coaching. So rather than showing you the video on the behaviours that we've spoken about today, let's actually go forward and start to have a look at what's in the next ACDC webinar.
We're already halfway through the ACDC model, so we've arrived at D. Any idea what that stands for?
Dream?
That's actually kind of close, but no, it stands for desired state. That means you explore what you want to happen. And here's the important bit. You make sure your coachee understands and agrees to the behaviours they'll need to perform to get there.
And I'm feeling a 5 coming on.
You got it. Now, number 1, ask questions to establish awareness of and agreement around the desired outcome. Once that's confirmed, then ask more questions to land on the desired behaviours required to reach that outcome.
Where you're going and how you're going to get there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then it's time to practice. You want to practice specific scenarios to make sure your coachee knows exactly what they need to do to be successful. So role play.
Oh, awesome. Role play. Hey, if we are going to do that, can I play like a secret agent man of mystery, Shane Sinclair?
It's not that kind of role playing, sorry.
Okay, roger that. I'll remain undercover.
After that, you discuss the link between desired behaviours and desired outcomes. And finally, as always, you get buy-in, where the coachee agrees to the desired behaviours. And that's the 5.
What do you say we call them the 005 behaviours?
Let's just stick with 5.
Roger that. Over and out. I've got you covered, by the way.
So you may recognise the big fella there, Shane Jacobson. What we've done is we've engaged some of Australia's best storytellers to engage your leaders in the content, to actually pull them into the learning journey. And they're fantastic. They're all about learning, but they all give a little bit of a giggle along the way, because leaders want to be engaged in their learning. They want to enjoy their learning, and we just don't want them to click to complete their content, which is kind of like the worst outcome, I reckon. So these videos are all supported by activities, as what you saw with Kate took you through that activity before, and our completion rates of this are just amazing. But in any GRIST program, it's not good enough to just complete the learning. What you have to do is you've got to show evidence of on-the-job application to graduate. And here's how we turn this into on-the-job learning. Coaches actually take the GIST by GRIST learning platform into their coaching sessions, and they can take it in on any device. So just log into the device and they put it on the same table as they're having their coaching conversation, or they just push record on their virtual coaching session. Yep, it's just that simple. And what they do is they record their conversation and they put the behaviours into practice, and it's immediate on-the-job application. After the coaching session, they then go through, and just as you do in your self-assessments, they assess their conversations just as a yes or no through all the different micro behaviours. But that's not even the best bit. Every time that someone does a self-assessment, each coaching conversation goes into a tracking tool, and so the dashboard highlights which behaviours they do consistently and which ones need some more focus. What it does is it creates a personalised embedding journey, as no two coaches' graphs are actually the same. So by clicking only on the behaviours that you need to focus on, so for this example, you'll see that practice is the first one. Hey, I could really focus on that. What they do is you can save hours in learning time, because it streamlines the learning process, and you only learn what you need to, which actually improves their speed to competence. So the GIST by GRIST can do so much more, but I promise just to give you the gist of it. So let's start to wrap it up. As I said, we believe that the GIST ACDC on the GIST is the fastest, simplest, and most effective behavioural coaching program available. So if you want to know more, I'll have a more in-depth look at ACDC on the GIST, please let us know in the chat field now, or drop me a line. My contact details on the screen, and we'd be more than happy to take you through a bit of a demo. Thank you so much for sticking around for a sneak peek into how GRIST are using calibration and self-assessment to help leaders become better coaches. So thank you very much, Kate. You're a legend. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.